Good morning, and welcome back to Tanya. We're doing Tanya chapter 38. And I really love the title of the chapter. We're on page 431. And the title is The Power of Kavana. Kavana in Hebrew means intention, concentration. And that is a very important word, because whatever we do, we want to have kavana, we want to have the right intention, and especially doing prayer and doing mitzvot. And the big question is, what happens if I am davening or I do a mitzvah without the kavana? And how do what is the path to assist me to have proper kavana? So there are many different layers of having proper concentration. And actually, the word concentration is probably key before we go with intention. You can't have intention without concentration. Concentration is the power to be in tune to what are you doing. We know that the evil inclination is extremely powerful, especially when it comes to mitzvahs or to prayer. Good morning, Raya. Good morning, Bertha. Those who just joined. If there's background noise, just mute yourself if you don't mind. So when we do a mitzvah, we daven, especially prayer. Our evil inclination loves getting engaged when we daven. It comes and pushes us and tries to distract us. And for that, we need to counter by having more kavana. Kavana is concentration. In our davening, we do certain things to help us to do kavana. One of the things we do, for example, by Shema, we cover our eyes. Why do we cover our eyes? So we can concentrate. And you're not just now davening something else, but this is a very powerful prayer. Close your eyes, concentrate. When we have our tefillin, we touch our tefillin. We touch our mezuzahs when we walk by a mezuzah. So these activities were incorporated for us to have more kavanah. In addition, we know that the concentration goes through the mind, the power of thought, and we went through this whole idea of thoughts and evil thoughts or distracting thoughts that come up. Is it truly who I am or not, which we discussed in the earlier chapters? And the conclusion of Tanya was, unless you're a tzaddik, a person is not in control of those thoughts that come unexpectedly from left field, so to speak, because they're coming from their evil inclination. So for example, I want to daven, I want to pray, and I start to pray, and 2 minutes of my prayer, my mind wanders somewhere else. I'm literally can sit in the synagogue or sit in prayer, and I'm thinking of my flight to Tampa, right? So these thoughts are not in your control not to have them. It's perfectly normal to have those thoughts. Why? Because you are not a tzaddik, you are a beinoni. We hope we strive to be a beinoni. And if you have those thoughts, you shouldn't say, okay, you know what, there's something fundamentally wrong with me. Why is it I can't have kavana? Why is it I can't have concentration? Why is it when I start to daven, I just think about the football game? Must be something wrong with me. So Tanya says nothing's wrong with you. You're perfectly normal. Your job is to X out of those thoughts. So just like you have a computer and you have all of a sudden something pops up on your computer. You didn't create that pop-up. You didn't install this pop-up. It came, it's a virus or something. But now, and it's something that is inappropriate. So you have a choice. You have a choice either to click and then to exit. We have these thoughts. What is the work of a beinoni? Our job is to X out those thoughts. When it comes to concentration, the first thing you gotta do is first of all, whenever there's something that is disrupting, the first thing you want to X them out. You want to X them out. You can't have them on the same time while you're trying to concentrate. How do you X out a thought? How do you X out something that is a foreign thought or a distraction? That takes mind over heart. That takes the mind over heart, the power of the mind. When I was in yeshiva in France, the dean of the yeshiva, his father was the founder of the yeshiva, and his father was known as his name was Rabbi Nissen Nemenov, and the Rebbe, or the previous Rebbe, referred to him as the Tanya's Beinoni. He's like the ultimate Beinoni. And he was a Jew who was working on himself 24/7. So once his grandson asked him, "Tell me, what is a Beinoni? How can you be a Beinoni? How can you be in control? What is a Beinoni? Somebody who's in control over his heart. He's in control over the incarnation." So he told him, "Come, sit with me on the couch, open up a Tehillim, a psalm, and read Tehillim for 5 minutes, and make sure you don't think about anything else. You just concentrate 5 minutes on the Tehillim." Okay, 5 minutes into Tehillim. He says, "Now what?" He says, "In these 5 minutes, you were obeying me. In these 5 minutes, you worked on yourself to concentrate." So it's not like such a, it's not for the saint, for the tzaddik's job to concentrate. Tzaddik has no problem concentrating. The fact that we struggle to concentrate is a good thing. And the fact is that we struggle means Hashem is telling us you have the power to do so. And when you do so, it's extremely powerful. However, we learned in the last paragraph, this is how we learned in the last chapter. So what's the main thing? The main thing is not to elevate the neshama. The main thing is not the neshama doesn't need an elevation. Neshama is holy and spiritual and pure and doesn't need elevation. What needs elevation? The body. The physical needs elevation. That's why mitzvahs are in the physical. That's why you can only perform a mitzvah while you're alive. And that's what we talked about the great mitzvah, tzedakah, which is the ultimate physical mitzvah. And we talked about the great learning Torah, which is the mind. Again, everything's physical and flesh, and the idea of Mashiach. And even after we die, when somebody mentions somebody who learn Torah, their lips are still talking. All these amazing ideas, but it's very much action-oriented. Torah, Judaism is all about actions and action-oriented service to Hashem. So if it's all about action, so why is there such emphasis on Kavanah? Let's read over here. This is chapter 38 comes to point. Chapter 38, how Kavanah sexual one proves that the soul doesn't need fixing. Chapter 35 to 37, Tanya has been offering of us some comfort over our spiritual predicament. Most of us will struggle to battle in vain with the impulse to evil, unable to prevail over it, because we are destined to carry out the most important task, to bring divine revelation, Shekhinah, to the animal soul, body and physical world, the spiritually darkest of places. For this goal, which is nothing less than the purpose of creation, the practical mitzvahs are most effective, since they engage the body and animal soul to the greatest extent. In chapter 37, we learned that even the mitzvahs performed through speech, such as Torah study prayer, could be considered practical mitzvahs, which engage the body and animal soul, because moving lips constitutes a concrete action. So now, on top 432, according to this logic, the mitzvahs performed through speech appear to have something of a confused identity. The practical component, moving the lips, elevates the animal soul and body, fulfilling the purpose of creation, whereas the mental and emotional component, understanding the Torah, connecting to God in prayer, does not. The following passage, the Tanya suggests that this somewhat bizarre conclusion is clearly supported by a point of Jewish law. Now, following everything that has been written above in chapter 37, we can further appreciate the ruling of the Jewish law described in the Talmud in the halachic codes. This is a halachic ruling that meditation does not count as recitation, which means that if you read the Shema only in your thoughts and did not articulate the words with your mouth, even though you did so with all your power of concentration, nevertheless, you did not fulfill the basic requirement of the commandment to read the Shema, and you have to go back and read it again and utter the words. The mitzvah is Kriyat Shema, the recitation of Shema. If you had the greatest meditation, Shema, but you didn't simply utter the words, you did not fulfill the mitzvah, which doesn't mean you didn't fulfill an obligation. That means you didn't accomplish the bringing down of godliness, of holiness, of Shekhinah into this world. What do you mean? I had the greatest meditation. I was in a different realm. It's zero, and you need to go back and read it again. Now, it's going to use a few examples, just to preference. There are mitzvahs that I have to say, mitzvahs I have to do, and there are mitzvahs you have to think or you have to feel. So when it comes to prayer, you have to say the Shema, for example. You don't have to say all the prayers that we have in the Siddur. Actually, Shema is not a prayer. Shema is a separate mitzvah from prayer. The Shema is a declaration of our faith. The declaration of faith, I need to utter. Prayer has to come from the heart. Ideally, you should utter the prayer as well. What are the other mitzvahs that you have to say in words? So, for example, the blessing after you eat. So, Bichat Hamazon, what we call benching. Also, it's a biblical commandment to thank Hashem in words. Look over here, continue. The same law applies to Bichas Hamazon, grace after the meal, which is a biblical requirement. And with the other blessing that are rabbinic law, which similarly must be verbalized in order to fulfill the mitzvah. And the same is the case with prayer, which must be verbalized, even though prayer is primarily the service of the heart. The sections of the prayer we must verbalize. For example, the Amidah. But again, you got to verbalize it. And now we turn to the reverse case. The words were recited, but the thought was lacking. But if you articulated the words of the Shema or prayer, so you were not attentive to what you're saying, you did fulfill the basic requirements of the mitzvah, Bedi Evet. This is a very important word in Hebrew. Bedi Evet, which means after the fact, meaning initially it's not okay, but if you did it after the fact, it's okay. That's called Bedi Evet. So if you said the Shema and you uttered the words, so again, if you said the Shema, if you only had the meditation of the Shema, but you didn't say the words, what's the law? You got to go back and say it. If the other way around, if you said it, but you didn't have meditation, so then you fulfilled the mitzvah, although it's b'di'evet, meaning it's not the best way to do it, but you don't have to go back. And you do not need to go back, repeat the text. 433. Jewish laws often express a preferable standard of observance, which is called in Hebrew a lechatchila, and a minimally acceptable, which is b'di'evet standard, which should not be aimed for, but is legally acceptable once you have already done it. So in this case, mindless words of Shema and prayer, though obviously not ideal, are considered acceptable after the fact. So obviously, God can stipulate, again, when we have these laws, and it's just laws made up by some people, this is all in the Torah, all Hashem wants it this way. So obviously, from the fact that when we look at the law, I can derive what is the system of mitzvahs, what is the system of energy that we're trying to accomplish. So if we look at these two laws, the flip side, right, speech versus meditation, so obviously God can stipulate how he wished to be worshipped, and he could require worship through thought, speech, or action. So that in itself does not pose a problem. What is confusing here is why in the mitzvah of prayer, Shema and Torah study, the two components of thought and speech are bound by diametrically opposed laws. The speech is crucial and the thought is dispensable. The tiny concern here is why in the context of a single mitzvah does speech become prioritized and thought marginalized, especially when it comes to prayer or Shema. You can think most important is kavana, most important is thought. But here we see now, the most important is the articulation. So not that I get why I have to say it in words, but why is there not such an emphasis on kavana? Why make the kavana like secondary? Before answering the question, the Tanya first notes an exception to the rule, except for the very first verse of Shema and the first blessing of the Amida prayer, which according to the Talmudic law do need to be repeated if you were not attentive to what you were saying. As the Talmud says in the second chapter of Brachos, reading the Shema, up to this point the mitzvah involves correct intention. From this point onward, the mitzvah is simply one of reading the words aloud. Okay, but so still, so in essence, when it comes to the first line of Shema, you do need to have kavanah, meaning it's a stipulation, meaning if you said the word Shema Israel, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and you didn't think about what you're saying, even though you utter it, you have to go back. But starting from the next line on, it's the deal that the Talmud debates. If somebody's reading the Torah, like on Shabbat, he reads from the Torah in front of the whole congregation, and he's reading, part of the reading is the Shema. Has he fulfilled the obligation of saying Shema? Because every day we have to say Shema twice, in the morning and the evening. So if you just read it by reading it on the Torah's reading, have you fulfilled the obligation or not? So there it says, if you have the intention, then you already fulfilled the mitzvah. But if you didn't have the intention, didn't have the kavanah, you did not. In any case, but still remains that kavanah is always secondary. So having noted this exception, Tanya now proceeds to explain this legal status of speech, thought, mitzvahs, and based on what we learned in the previous chapter. The reason for the legal emphasis on speech and the emphasis on thought is because the soul itself does not require fixing at all. For mitzvahs, rather, the purpose of mitzvah observance is to pull down, quote unquote, God's light in order to fix the energizing animal soul and the body. And therefore, it's crucial that the mitzvah involves the animal soul and body through actual words spoken by the soul using the 5 organs of speech, which are the throat, lips, palate, tongue, and teeth. This is from the Sefer Yetzirah. It's interesting. And the same, we'll finish up. And the same is true when the practical commandment, which the animal soul performs through the body's other limbs, as we learned in chapter 37. Even the mitzvah of saying the Shema, praying, and studying Torah are primarily aimed at elevating your body, and that's why Jewish law stipulates bodily involvement, moving the lips, as an indispensable component. On the other hand, the more spiritual, mental, emotional component of the mitzvah are not legally crucial, since the soul does not require fixing at all. They're not the reason why you're here as a soul and a body. So as we are already learned in chapter 37, the whole purpose of the mitzvah is to engage the animal soul. Where do you find the animal soul in its fullest close? In action and in speech. Thought is more connected to the inner garment, is closer connected to the neshama, to the neshama, to the soul. Neshama doesn't need the mitzvah. The body needs the mitzvah. If I fulfill the mitzvah only through my thought, which means I'm only touching the neshama, I'm not touching really the body or the animal soul. It's nice, it's beautiful, but it's not the purpose. That's not what we're here for. You can stay up in Gan Eden, you don't have to come down to this world. The fact you came down to this world is to engage the body. That's why the emphasis, the priority is always in the action and the verbalization. And as he says it so beautifully, by the five, what is it called? 5 organs of speech: throat, lips, palate, tongue, and teeth. Everything has to be moving when you pray, not everything. You got to use every physical part of it. Just don't spit. And actually in Kabbalah it goes through all the alphabet, that every letter of the alphabet, it touches another part of the mouth, right? Aleph, face. You look already, bet. The lips are moving more, the tongue moves more, the throat moves more. Every letter gets those 5 steps. Maybe, I don't know right now, maybe the 5 organs of speech connected to the 5 levels of the neshama. Perhaps I haven't studied it. Maybe we'll find a connection. Let's just all of a sudden things come so full circle and also beautiful. So now the question is, okay, so beautiful. So you understand why the physical, the speaking is so important, articulation. So, but still, if the soul doesn't need to be engaged, so why even bother with kavanah? So he comes, and this comes another foundational teaching in Tanya, that to every mitzvah and to every experience in this world, there's always body and soul, right? Just like people have body and souls, animal have body and souls, table has body and souls, the tree has body and soul. So when it comes to a mitzvah, you have the body. The body is the physical form of everything. The soul is what gives us energy, what's the life force. So when you have a mitzvah, when you create a mitzvah, when you are speaking, you're creating something physical, you're creating a certain energy. So when you are doing, when you do a mitzvah, so let's go very physical. Let's go with the mitzvah of tzedakah. So if you take the money and give to tzedakah, you fulfill the mitzvah with your body, and you created the body of the mitzvah. What's the body of the mitzvah? You took the money and gave it to a poor man. What's the soul of the mitzvah? So just like when you do an action, if you're just doing with your body, your soul is not there. It's soulless. It's still doing something, but the soul is missing. But when you do the mitzvah with kavanah, that means you're with your neshama, your passion. Now you infuse the body with neshama. So also the mitzvah that you're doing, which is still a body, it's just money that you're giving to somebody, but now you're giving it with kavanah. You're giving it with passion. You're giving it with love, with care, with excitement. You infuse the body of tzedakah with the soul of tzedakah. And that's where kavanah comes into place. And he calls it like basically like a bird. You can have a bird that a bird can exist even if it doesn't have wings. But what does a bird do when it has no wings? It's missing its main component. So a mitzvah without kavanah is like a body, is like a bird without wings. You need to have two wings to carry every mitzvah. Let's see how he goes in. Okay. Let's do one more section. And before I forget, remind me at the end of the class to give you a story that happened this morning. You're going to be the first one to hear the story. A mitzvah story. And it's just when you see this, when you say, why watch these stories, you just want to pinch yourself. All right, section 2. We'll keep the suspense up so you guys don't fall asleep. Okay, section 2, mitzvah and kavanah, body and soul. This concludes a lengthy discussion beginning back in chapter 35 about the virtue of practical mitzvahs and their power to elevate the body and animal soul. In the final section, until chapter 40, Tanya will address the other side of the coin and highlight the great virtue of attuning the mind and heart, which is really kavanah, to a mitzvah. By the way, this is something I want to really address, the kavanah, and talk about it and bring about. And I got something that we got to learn, do a lot more. Kavanah. So for the next few weeks, we're just going to hammer the whole beauty of kavanah. This is, if you don't have kavanah in life, you're missing out. Again, it's like a dead body. As we shall see, the emphasis on the practical component of the mitzvahs ought not to undermine in any way the value attached to a mitzvah's mental emotional components, which are also a requirement of Jewish law. And it's only that after the fact, a lack of attentiveness doesn't legally disqualify a mitzvah. So he again emphasizes not having kavanah is just an after, it's a b'di'evet. You know, but again, I just want to use that line. In life, those two words you should always know in Hebrew. You have to pick up two good words in the Torah from halacha: lechatchila and b'di'evet. Lechatchila means
after the fact.
No, lechatchila means
lechatchila. Okay.
It comes as the initial requirement. The word lechatchila in the word in Hebrew is from the word chila, which is from the beginning, meaning from the get-go you have to do this, right? So let me give you an easy example that you can always remember. Lechatchila, you have to file your taxes April 15, right? That's a katchila. And you have it, if you didn't file, you're going to get an extension. You're going to pay a penalty, right? So that's the lechatchila is how we want to do it from the get-go. And b'di'evet is after the fact. If you didn't do it, okay, now you got to find the secondary option, or sometimes we'll let it go. So when he's saying the kavana is not a precondition to the mitzvah, it's only b'di'evet. The lechatchila, you do need to have kavana, and there's such an emphasis on kavana. Okay. And continue inside. Nevertheless, all the above emphasis on the practical component of a mitzvah doesn't mean that the attentiveness is unimportant. As been said, prayer or the blessing without kavana are like a body without a soul. This is from Rabbi Yitzchak Arama on Akedah Yitzchak Shah 58. Phrase or body without soul seems at first glance to suggest lifelessness and death. To say that the mitzvah without kavanah is dead and meaningless will contradict our entire discussion above that. Even in the absence of attentiveness, there is great validity and significance to a mitzvah. You can't say it's dead without kavanah. We just said before that even he said it, it's okay. So Tanya offers a different interpretation, which means that just as all the created beings in this world have a body and a soul, each having their own separate sources of life energy from God, so too the practical deed of a mitzvah and its kavanah each have their own life energy. However, the life energy of the body practical deed is far less than the life energy of the soul kavanah. The phrase like a body without soul doesn't mean to say that the body deed is dead and lifeless, also has life, but it's far less life than the life energy of kavanah, of the soul. It means that only the body's own minimal life energy is present, as opposed to the abundance of life energy found in the soul. You have a person who people call him, he's lifeless, right? He's cold, he's lifeless, he's a zombie, whatever you want to call him. Doesn't mean he's dead, he's still walking around, right? But he's so detached that he's just the minimal energy. So of course, you do a mitzvah without the soul, without kavanah, doesn't mean it's a dead mitzvah, you didn't do it. It's still a mitzvah, but it's not, it's little, has very little energy to it. So to clarify this point, the Tanya will illustrate how both the soul and body have their own separate source of life in God. First, we'll demonstrate that the soul at all three levels, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, is alive with scriptural citation. So before we start, we know there's 5 levels to the soul, but on a conscious level, we're more dealing with the 3 lower levels of the soul, nefesh, ruach, and neshama. For the soul is the nefesh of every living thing and the ruach of every individual being, and the neshama of everything that has the spirit of life in its nostrils. We just mentioned those 3 levels, which includes all the animals. This doesn't mean to say the body is devoid of its own life force and God separate from the soul. As we'll discuss at length in the second book of Tanya, God brings all physical matter into existence continually, which means that there's a constant energetic life force being pumped by God into all physical matter, regardless of the presence of any soul. In fact, even a rock must have its own divine energy, otherwise it wouldn't continue to exist. So when we're referring to the neshama, that has 3 levels. But independently of those 3 levels, the body in itself has its own soul, its own life energy that pumps it, that makes it into existence. Just like a rock. We said even a rock has life in it, a life source, otherwise it wouldn't be in existence. The fact that the rock is in existence is because Hashem's words are created it not only once, but we create it every moment from nothing to something, as we're going to learn in the second book of Tanya. But which, by the way, also means that even a dead person has life to it, and it goes back to that. To go back to what we learned last week, and let's continue. And God gives them all life. Quotes from the book of Nehemiah, both body and soul, matter and spirit, and He brings them into being continually, something from nothing, to His light and energy which He pours into them. It's even the physical body, even completely motionless, stones and dirt, contain light and energy from God. Otherwise, they would return to be null and void as they once were. So even stones and dirt are alive in the sense that God's life energy must constantly be pumped into them to maintain their existence. And if stones and dirt have their own life force, then certainly the physical body does too, independent of the soul. So nevertheless, there's simply no similarity or comparison at all between the divine light energy which shines in the body at the very minimum to the body life force versus to the light and energy which shines in the soul, in the neshama. Since the soul is orbitally alive, it's alive of every living thing. So the statement that a mitzvah without attentiveness, our kavanah, is like a body without soul means not that the mitzvah is dead or invalid, but it's low in life energy like the body and not high in life energy like the soul. Okay. Now he wants to delve, can delve a lot deeper than this. And okay, let's do one more section. Ready for the one more section, or should we stop?
Yeah.
That one's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I did not read ahead today. I read till here, but let's touch base anyways. I feel like we're kind of in the middle and we don't want to let it go. Okay. Section 3, the hole and the curtain. What a title. It doesn't say the hole in the sheet, right? It says the hole in the curtain. What's going on right here? So it's going to now go a little bit, as we would call it, Kabbalistic. Okay? Kabbalistic. So when we're talking about, because I think what he's trying to address, if we just established that even the body has its very own life force, right? Where does it get it from? If in a person, in a human, there is body and soul, and the soul, I understand, is the godly life force that's within us. And you're saying now that the body doesn't take the life force from the neshama. Body has an independent life force, a godly life force. It's much low energy. Hello?
We can hear you.
Then where is it taken from? Where is it coming from? Anybody can answer. Where is it coming from? Where is the life force of the body? Not for the neshama. Where does the body get something life from Hashem if it's all physical? And the famous word will be? Anybody?
Hashem,
No.
from the godly soul.
Where does the animal soul come from? Where does it take its energy from? Where does the animal soul take the energy from? On Klippa.
Klipanaga.
Klipanaga, exactly. So let's see over here. But now he's going to give us the Kabbalistic DNA of Klippa. Are you ready? Yes, that was your question.
But isn't Kalippa Noga also from Hashem?
Correct. And we're gonna see, and now we're gonna see how it is also from Hashem. Let's see.
Oh, okay.
So we are on 436 in section 3, the hole in the curtain. When we speak here of the soul, the reference is obviously to an animal soul.
the nefesh of every living thing, which includes all the animals. And as we have learned, our animal soul is from Klippus Noga, a forest which hides God's presence on earth. So if the soul we are speaking of here is from Klippus Noga, and the body is also from Klippus Noga, could there really be a huge difference in their level of divine light and energy? Both of them, after all, emanate from a force which hides God. To clarify this point, the Tanya will first explain how God's light is hidden and diminished as it enters Klippus Noga and thereby the world. And even though the body and soul light is one and the same, in the sense that both the body and the soul's light suffer equally from the hiding of God's face and filters, since God's light is first hidden and dimmed. Only then is it received by them, since both the body and soul are entities found in this world. And as a whole, this world conceals equally the light and energy from the breath of his mouth. Through the hiding of God's face cast upon him, and the rung by rung downgrade of this chain of the worlds, numerous profound diminishments of Tzimtzumim of the divine light. Klippus Noga is a force that hides God, making our autonomous existence possible. How can it be powered by God? For this to happen, the divine light of Klippus Noga must be hidden and dimmed numerous times. It must be downgraded so that the energy can be compatible with Klippus. So this process of hiding and diminishment continues progressively until the divine light has been dimmed so much that it can be received by Klippus Noga to energize the overall infrastructure of this material world. So in other words, just in simple language, the light of Hashem had to create Klippa, but in order for Klippa to exist, the light of Hashem had to be dimmed, right? Not diminished, but in a sense dimmed, which means kind of there's a veil, so that Klippa can exist and not be completely consumed by Hashem's light. Otherwise, Klippa wouldn't be Klippa if it would be just completely consumed by Hashem's light. It wouldn't have the ability to exist. It's kind of repetitive what we learned in the other chapters. So I'm going to read through it a little bit. As we learned earlier, all objects and living creatures in this world derive their energy from either from Klippus Noga if they are permissible, or from the completely impure Klippas if they're forbidden. How then can the Tanya say here that Klippus Noga alone represents the overall infrastructure of this material world, when there are so many forbidden things too, which are not powered by Klippus Noga? Klippus Noga is the energy of all the permissible and virtually pure things in this world, and it is from this Klippus Noga energy and through his agency, an energy then flows to impure things, the impure Klippas. Since, as we stated above, Klippus Noga is an intermediary between the holy powers and the impure Klippas. So Klippus Noga represents the overall infrastructure of this material world, because all the divine light and energy destined for this world first passes through it. Whatever energy the completely impure Klippas need must be sucked from the Klippus Noga. Basically, the impure Klippas take it from Klippus Noga, and Klippus Noga takes it from Hashem. So returning to our question, if everything is in the physical world derived from Klippus Noga, which suffers from a hidden God of God's face, is there really such a difference between the divine light and energy in the body of Klippa and the animal soul of Klippa? Why do we say that a body without soul is severely lacking divine energy if both bodies suffer from the same formidable eclipse of God's light? So, no, I'm going to choose to stop over here. My head's spinning a little bit, and we're getting too deep stuff here. We'll pick it up here from last week. I think at the end, which I want to, as I said earlier, I did not prepare this such. What he's saying here at the animal soul and the body, they both come from Klippa, but the animal soul has some type of superiority over the body that takes from Klippa. He's trying to understand the difference. Now, we'll elaborate on the question and the answer starting from here next week, God willing. Forgive me, we should have stopped earlier, but let's stop over here. But I want to conclude with the story. So this morning I was those who don't know, I was in New York last yesterday. I flew in yesterday morning, and the Rebbe's yard side, and was there with thousands of people prayed at the Rebbe's graveside after waiting 4.5 hours on that. Over the line was over 2 miles. It snaked through the whole cemetery till we got to the Rebbe. And then when he got in there, you had literally a few seconds. So I came with about 8 pages of requests. I told the guy in charge, I'm not myself, I'm representing at least 100 people here. Give me a few extra minutes. And he said, I can go on the side, read all the papers and put them down, and we prayed. Last night, I texted one of my colleagues in Tampa, if anybody's on my flight this morning. We had a 7:30 flight, Southwest from LaGuardia to. So he said, yeah, I'm on the same flight. Why don't we share an Uber? He lives on the corner in Crown Heights. So I basically scheduled last night an Uber. You can schedule an Uber, and for 6 o'clock, it gives you like a 10-minute frame, like the 10 to 6 to 6 o'clock. So I told the guy, be ready by 6 o'clock. Please be ready on the corner. We'll pick you up. Basically, I woke up this morning and somehow, by 20 to 6, the Uber says he's already here. I know they don't want to sit around, so I canceled. I canceled. Cost $5, you canceled. And I call, and then I call the next, and I look for the next Uber. All of a sudden, I can't find an Uber. Maybe they don't like when you cancel. Anyway, I call my friend. This is maybe try from your app. He says, all of a sudden, it went from $40 to $70. You know, the Ubers to play with the prices. It's a 20-minute drive. So I said, let's wait 2 minutes. Let's try it again. I'll try for mine. Sure enough, 2 minutes later, I went down back to $50 instead of 40. Okay, better than 70. And I clicked, okay, the Uber's coming. Get into the Uber together. And okay, we're talking, we're chatting. And all the conversation, the taxi driver turns around and says, where are you guys from? I said, from Florida. And what's your name? I asked him, what's your name? He says, Ram. And he starts talking to me in Hebrew. And he says that I have, and we start talking, and he says, matter of fact, I'm looking to move down to Florida. My wife is Russian, and we want to move to Florida. We're in Florida.
Finish.
So he says we're looking either in St. Augustine or perhaps on the West Coast. We heard about the springs, about the lake. Again, so what? And my friend's flight was a half an hour later. He took Delta to Tampa. So he dropped me off at Southwest. We chatted. He has a son who's 12. I'm gonna help him with the bar mitzvah. And then when I left Southwest, I told my friend, you know, see what now you know what happened, why this happened this morning. This whole craziness with the app, with the canceling of the taxi, and back and forth. Hashem made, I pinched him. We didn't even talk. I left the taxi. 5 minutes later, my friend sends me a picture that when he dropped him off at Delta Terminal, he pulled out his tefillin and he put on tefillin. And I'll show you the picture. You can't make these things up. All right, I'll share it here. Let's see if I can grab the picture. Share. And here it is. You see it?
Yeah.
This morning, LaGuardia Airport.
Wow.
Okay. Okay, cool.
So now, just to conclude, you understand? Neshama comes down to this world, right? Neshama comes down to this world. Neshama doesn't need to come down to this world. Neshama needs to accomplish something that the body needs to accomplish, the animal souls. And we all interconnected. Neshama is our driver, is our captain. Each of our neshamas are interconnected. Nothing happens by mistake. Everything happens by divine providence. His neshama, my neshama, your neshama, all connected, right? Why did I take a 7:30 flight this morning? I could have stayed to the evening. I want to be back so I could give the class today. I want to make sure we can give the class. I could have taken a 7 o'clock flight tonight and enjoy myself an extra day in New York, but there's work to do. Everything happens by chance. This guy needed a place, didn't put on tefillin today. His neshama was trying to pull him on a taxi. He made sure that the other taxi gets canceled. I don't know why he canceled the taxi, why I had to. All those things were to get this person to put on tefillin. And perhaps now that we have his number, when he moves down, either in St. Augustine or here, he'll have a Chabad rabbi waiting for him, a mitzvah his son. And that's how we see how Hashem is orchestrating things in our lives. Sometimes we see them, sometimes we don't see them. But when we do see them, we have to talk about it. We have to share them because we get inspired, not for ourselves, for others. To know that everything is by kavanah. Our life is full of kavanah. Everything is, Hashem has non-stop kavanah. Us, we get distracted. Make it a great day. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All the best. Don't forget to come to Shabbos tomorrow. Special Shabbos tomorrow.
All right.